The year after we got married, Lucas wrapped his arms around his first love, telling me to go sign the divorce papers. But what he didn't know was that I was already dead. Dead on our wedding anniversary. The seawater was cold and salty. My baby and I waited, only to hear the phone get disconnected. On the 7th day after I died, he unilaterally announced his engagement. When my body was found, the usually composed and rational Lucas went completely crazy, insisting that I was still alive. After death, I floated in the air, still able to smell the alcohol and nicotine in the air. It was a noisy party. Lucas's first love had returned to the country. Her name was Helen, his first love and former girlfriend. She wore a champagne-colored mermaid dress, with a tear mole at the corner of her eye making her look cold and beautiful. She stood intimately next to Lucas, enjoying the envious looks from others. They were the stars of the party. A perfect match. I stood by the champagne tower next to them, staring at this glaring scene. Why does my heart still hurt even though I'm already dead? The day I died was an unlucky day. It was our wedding anniversary. I packed my bags excitedly, looking forward to a trip with Lucas. I had been nagging him every day, telling him I wanted to see the ocean. He would gently pat my head and indulgently agree. But that day, I was the only one who got on the plane. Before boarding, I called Lucas countless times. From busy tones to power-off messages, from panic to numbness, I finally boarded the plane under the urging and confused looks of the flight attendants. Ironically, the last message I received before switching to airplane mode was from an unknown number. It was a screenshot from a social media platform. Lucas's social media. The picture showed a large bouquet of vibrant roses and a black velvet ring box beside it. Two hands clasped together in front of the screen. A diamond ring shone on a slim female finger, glaringly bright. Now, I just want to be with you. This was hidden from me. I was spared from seeing this sickening scene directly. Under that post, a group of Lucas's friends flooded in with their blessings. I turned off my screen, my eyes feeling sore. 2 years of marriage, and it had always been me buzzing around Lucas. Only today, did I realize, I didn't even know all his friends' faces. Not once had I ever appeared on Lucas's social media. I thought of the love letters I found in Lucas's drawer as I packed before the trip. From his teenage years until our marriage. At every stage, Lucas cherished memories of Helen. He told me during our wedding that he hated Helen, even resented her. Reading those letters made my heart ache as if someone was choking me, forcing me to spit blood. Only after death did I learn that the unknown number often harassing me with texts was Helen's. It was already 11 p.m. Lucas showed no intention of coming home. If it were any other time, I would have already called him, urging him to come back home. Even on a trip, I would video call him regularly, but Lucas looked at his phone and furrowed his brow. I couldn't call or text him anymore. He no longer had that annoying person buzzing around him every day. Our messages were few. Mostly, it was me talking to myself. The most recent one was about a new recipe I learned. I excitedly asked him if he was working overtime, but Lucas didn't reply. That night, he didn't come home either. I checked the timestamp on his phone messages. Now thinking back, Lucas was probably with Helen that day. He flipped through our chat history repeatedly, not looking happy. His fingers hovered over the keyboard. Working overtime. Lucas thought for a moment, then deleted the text. Perhaps he thought since I was on a trip, it wasn't necessary to report to me. It was all lies anyway. Feeling frustrated, he carelessly threw his phone on the couch and returned to the lively party. Helen, the star of the party, like a princess surrounded by admirers, stood in the middle of the crowd. Seeing Lucas approach, she naturally linked arms with him. A nosy business partner serving drinks quickly approached, smiling obsequiously at Lucas. Lucas, I didn't realize your business success comes with a lady like her behind it. Lucas had never taken me to these parties. In their eyes, I was just a regular company employee, doing odd jobs. Not fitting of the title Mrs. Lucas. Helen gracefully clinked glasses with the business partner, acting as though she was already Mrs. Lucas. And Lucas didn't deny it. He pressed his lips tightly, his expression distant. It was past midnight, already early morning. The party wasn't over yet, moving to a private room. Maybe the heavens pitied me. Seeing that I only found out after dying that I lived most of my life for others was pretty tragic. So, I got a brief time to hang around, but I could only float near Lucas. If it were before, I would cling to him, but now, it felt annoyingly repulsive. Lucas leaned casually on the couch, watching Helen sing a love song for him. Even in spirit form, I couldn't fight my biological clock, but the room was so noisy. I could only blankly stare at their intimacy. Lucas kept refreshing his messages, the list still empty. I didn't understand what he was looking for. Was he waiting for a message from me? Lucas, sing this song with me, okay? Helen noticed something off in Lucas's mood, smiling as she handed him the microphone. I vaguely remembered his friends saying he won some singing award back in school, but he never sang in front of me. He said he couldn't sing. My eyes felt sore again. I didn't want to hear Lucas's voice. Turns out he can sing, but those times and memories belong only to Helen. Unexpectedly, Lucas pressed his lips together, his usually indifferent eyes clouded. He didn't sing. It was late, so I decided to head back. Lucas picked up his jacket from the sofa and got up to leave the room. Everyone who had been joking around fell silent, their eyes darting around the room. Suddenly, it was quiet. Even I, who had to follow Lucas out, could feel the air getting thicker. Lucas, Helen's smile broke, her eyes reddening as she blocked his way, looking vulnerable. In that moment, even the tear mole under her eye seemed alive. Everyone else had the good sense to leave the room. I wanted to follow suit, but stopped, watching the tense atmosphere between Lucas and Helen. Helen, stop it. It's late. Let me take you home. Lucas looked at her kindly, still as forgiving as ever. But Helen wasn't buying it. You're still thinking about Shirley, aren't you? I was wrong to leave you first, but you know I had no choice. Now that I'm back, we can be together again. Helen's voice was trembling, full of tears, delicate and pitiful. If I was standing in front of her, I probably wouldn't resist slapping her, interfering in my lawful marriage to Lucas, acting like a victim. Lucas, of course, couldn't bear to see his first love suffer. He pulled her into his arms, comforting her. Don't overthink. Marrying her was just a mistake. Once I'm divorced, we can be together. 2 years of married life, dismissed by the person I once loved as a mere whim. I dug my nails into my palms, feeling a sharp pain. Divorce. I should have seen it coming, noticed the signs. From the first harassing text I received, I should have known. When Lucas didn't reply to me, when he didn't come home at night, I should have known. I naive thought he was just worried about a work project. Lucas ran his fingers through Helen's hair, their intimacy rising like a heady drink. I watched as Lucas gripped Helen's neck and kissed her intensely. The wedding ring on his finger gleamed under the lights. I desperately tried to take off the identical ring engraved with his name, but I couldn't muster the strength. A wave of nausea hit me, trapping me beside Lucas, helplessly watching that disgusting scene. That night, Lucas didn't come home. He and Helen woke up together in a hotel bed. Helen got up earlier, satisfied, wearing Lucas' shirt. Using the same harassing number, she sent me an explicit and provocative photo. I watched her seamless actions, feeling a bitter laugh rise. Maybe I was laughing at myself for not seeing it sooner, or maybe at Helen's brazenness. On the 4th day after my death, Lucas finally came home. I floated by his side, watching him repeatedly dial my number from the car. Each call went straight to voicemail. Lucas even called Lily, a good friend from work, but she responded professionally, not revealing anything. Lucas wasn't as patient as I was. After a few calls, he frustratingly instructed his assistant. As Lucas' wife, we didn't communicate much directly. Prepare the divorce papers. Just hand them to Shirley when she gets back. If she won't sign, send them to her house. I traced the ring I couldn't remove, my face emotionless. If I could still sign, I would hand-deliver the divorce papers myself, but showing this divorce to my family would only make them hate me more. I've always just been a pawn for them to gain favors. Lucas thought he understood my feelings. He saw the hearts I'd drawn around dates in the calendar, and sighed with frustration. He seemed to remember that day was supposed to be for our planned trip. Below the calendar, I'd written, "We'll sit on the rocks and watch the sea." Even Lucas' assistant failed to reach me. Lucas realized I was ignoring him and thought I was angry, so he pretended to call them all out of affection. I sat on my usual sofa, expressionless, watching as the mall delivered one gift after another. At least he remembered what I liked. Lucas thought gifts alone could make me obedient again. It was true. Whenever I got upset, he would buy me things to brush it off, making me behave like a pet he casually maintained. In the days I was gone, Lucas' life wasn't as comfortable as he had imagined. Working late into the night, Lucas instinctively reached for his cup, only to remember no one had warmed his milk. I lay next to the desk, watching his tired face lit by the computer, struggling to stay awake. If Lucas didn't sleep, neither could I. He sat at the computer desk until after midnight. When I could no longer bear it, he suddenly grabbed his phone and opened our chat. "Shirley, are you mad? Don't mess around. Answer my call." My eyes stung from the sudden brightness, tears nearly falling. "No, next time," I whispered in the dark study, facing Lucas. There won't be a next time, Lucas. Lucas was sleeping in my usual spot, with my stuffed animal placed at the head of the bed. I looked at him resentfully, wanting to punch him in the face. He hadn't slept well. His eyes were dark, and there was stubble on his chin. Lucas stared blankly at my empty closet. He finally picked up the phone and called his assistant. Book me a flight to where Shirley went, now. But it was pointless now, and Lucas didn't leave right away. When he got a call from Helen, his expression suddenly turned panicked. The background noise on the other end was chaotic, and I could faintly hear Helen sobbing. Without hesitation, Lucas cancelled the flight, and chose to go see Helen. Standing behind him, it was the first time I saw him so frantic. Oddly, I felt relieved. Any awkward feelings I had because of Lucas's strange behavior disappeared. Thank goodness Lucas was still a mess. Helen was caught in a crowd, with her manager shielding her face with clothing. People around them hurled insults. Back home, and already hitting on someone's husband. Shameless. Nowadays, any nobody can become a celebrity. Lucas arrived, just in time, to shield Helen, with his tailored suit from an egg about to break. Lucas had a severe cleanliness issue. Watching the egg yolk trickle down his suit made me feel a bit disgusted. Helen was pale, lips devoid of color, as if she'd faint any second. She leaned weakly into Lucas's arms, tears streaming down her face. The night of the party, someone had secretly installed a camera in a guest room. It had captured them in an intimate moment. In the dimly lit photos, it was clear they were kissing. A pile of these photos lay scattered at my feet. Helen's face was circled in red, crossed out, with the word mistress written beside it. I stared at the photos, a smile curling at my lips. If paparazzi only caught these photos, there'd just be some needless rumors for her to deal with. But then someone exposed that Lucas was actually married. They didn't reveal who he was married to, just solidly confirmed the fact. I wasn't sure who did it, but I was grateful. At least I, a dead person, wouldn't have to be dragged into such a scandal. Helen fainted in Lucas's arms. Public opinion online was overwhelmingly negative, words of hate flooding toward Helen. Lucas sat by her hospital bed, peeling apples and keeping soup warm for her. The care he showed was meticulous. This was the 7th day since my death, but no one knew. Helen was an artist managed by Lucas's company. The first thing Lucas did after she was discharged was arrange a press conference. He gathered well-known journalists. I sat in the front row, bored and resting my chin in my hand, watching Helen. Today she was playing the fragile beauty, as if she'd faint from too much talking. I'm sorry to take up your valuable time. I just want to clarify something. Helen and I have known each other since high school. We've been through many ups and downs and finally got to a point where we could be together. But I didn't expect such nasty rumors to come out about me. Helen smiled confidently at the press, lifting her hand to show off a ring with an even bigger diamond. We're engaged. The room buzzed with voices. Reporters rushed forward, one of them shoving a microphone toward Lucas. Yes, Helen and I are engaged. A reporter scrambled out, urgently questioning him. So are you divorced from Miss Shirley? What was the reason for your marriage? I was stunned, wondering how this reporter had managed to dig out my identity. Lucas's usually indifferent expression shifted slightly at the mention of my name. He paused before replying, his voice dry. We are already divorced. Unilaterally. Suddenly, a reporter, looking at his phone, covered his mouth in shock. A group of tourists was lost at sea, and the bodies have been recovered. The reporter scrolled through his phone, trembling as he went through the list of deceased. Shirley. At that moment, Lucas's phone rang. In the vast hall, the voice on the end was distinctly clear. Hello, is this Lucas, husband of Miss Shirley? She met with an unfortunate accident. Her body has been. Lucas snatched the reporter's phone instantly. His fingers shook as he stared at the screen, as if wanting to erase my name from it. Impossible, this can't be. She just went to see the sea. How could she die? This news must be mistaken, right? Lucas seemed to lose it, his eyes bloodshot. As he looked around in horror and disbelief, I suddenly locked eyes with him. The old feeling of tension made my long-dead heart skip a beat. Lucas's voice was hoarse and deep, and he began to move toward where I stood. Shirley, why are you here? Come back with me. Lucas reached out, trying to grab my wrist, but his hand passed through thin air. He touched nothing but the emptiness of my transparent figure. On stage, Helen could no longer maintain her composure. Her face twisted, a mixture of fear and confusion at Lucas's bizarre behavior. The reporter whose phone was snatched by Lucas hid behind others in horror. They looked at Lucas like he was a lunatic, a clown, just watching him put on his own show. Why are you all looking at me like that? Shirley is right here. Lucas finished his words and then tried to grab me again, even wanting to hug me. He was manic and paranoid, shouting crazily like a trapped beast. After repeatedly reaching out into the void, his emotions finally began to crack. his eyes turning bloodshot. "Shirley, what tricks are you playing? You can't die." People around could no longer bear it. Some reporters started running outside, others lifted their phones, and some even started live streaming. I thought that soon, videos of his madness were going to be all over the internet. Helen staggered, biting her lip and grabbing Lucas's arm, trying to stop his frantic actions. "Shirley is dead, Lucas. Please, I've been waiting for you for so long. There's nothing between you two anymore." "Yeah, I'm already dead. I suppose that prepared divorce agreement won't get signed now. I hope to cut all ties with Lucas, not to stay bound in this nauseating relationship even after my death." Lucas ignored Helen, not sparing her even an extra glance. He just stared at me intently, afraid I'd suddenly disappear from his sight. I saw the ring on his hand with bulging veins. It wasn't our wedding ring in that spot anymore. It was his engagement ring with Helen. I slowly raised my hand and gave Lucas a bitter smile. That ring that wouldn't come off, binding me like a shackle. Finally, at this moment, I took it off in front of Lucas with my own hand. There was no real ring to fall on the ground, rolling a few times before stopping at Lucas's feet. His eyes instantly welled up, and with red eyes, he went to pick up the ring like a lost little child. But Lucas couldn't pick it up. He could never put a ring on my finger again. When I looked at him, my expression was cold, with no trace of attachment in my tone. "Lucas, we're divorced. Whether in life or death, we're no longer connected. Seeing your own body after death, it's indeed a strange feeling." I covered my eyes, not wanting to look, because my corpse really looked too ugly. The whole body was pale from soaking, even gnawed on by sea creatures, limbs incomplete. I guessed my face was swollen and puffy from the water. Lucas was still wearing the finely tailored suit from the press conference. He had driven over at top speed, his hair in disarray, having lost his usual meticulous demeanor. The deceased Shirley, 26 years old. "It's not her. Shirley's not dead." Lucas, who had been silently staring at the corpse covered by a white sheet, suddenly spoke up. His voice trembled, but carried an undeniable determination. He didn't even dare to glance more at my floating form beside him. The cop gave him a strange look and quickly recognized him as the guy who went viral for his madness videos online. The cop sized Lucas up, his eyes finally landing on the engagement ring on his finger. "If you're hallucinating from grief, you should rest first. We will notify Shirley's family." After all, the cop paused for a moment, a trace of contempt in his voice. "You two are already divorced. Lucas, help me collect my body." This was my first time looking at him head-on after my death. The seawater was too cold, also very salty. I still couldn't learn to swim, but I wanted to be buried by the sea so that my soul could be a little freer. But Lucas ignored my words. He still kept his lips tightly pressed, fists clenched, staring dead at the corpse covered by the white cloth. I even had to wonder if he was going to pounce on it and pull away the cloth. The cops contacted my family to help collect my body, but to no avail. Perhaps my fun-loving brother was off partying, and my alcoholic father was probably vomiting himself unconscious. The morgue door opened, revealing a disheveled Helen, who had followed Lucas from the scene. Seeing my corpse, she covered her mouth in disbelief, tears flowing instantly. I floated nearby, watching her put on this act, and couldn't help but admire her. She definitely deserved that acting award. Regarding my death, Helen couldn't entirely escape responsibility, though now she was acting like she knew nothing. "Lucas, please help take care of Shirley's body, then we can talk about our engagement." The standing cop sneered at the mention of the engagement. Lucas roughly shook off Helen's hand from his sleeve, still fixated on the white sheet, murmuring almost in a trance. "No, Shirley isn't dead. You all are lying to me. She's standing right here. Lucas, she's been dead for 7 days now." Helen's eyes were bloodshot, gritting her teeth at Lucas. "No, you can't say it. You can't say she's dead." Right now, Lucas seemed like those dumb CEOs from novels I used to rant about to Lily, though he certainly fit the dumb part well. The morgue door opened again, and as I floated by, the draft nearly blew me away. Lily looked weary, having clearly rushed over from work. Blame it on how far my travel spot was. Lucas drove and still got there by midnight. Naturally, it took Lily longer. But what I didn't expect was that the always gentle, frail big sisterly Lily suddenly swung her arm and slapped Lucas. Caught off guard, Lucas's handsome face immediately turned red and swollen from the impact. "So, you're the one who made Shirley upset and worried all the time. Are you even human? Lucas, do you know Shirley was pregnant? You didn't care for your wife, but you had the nerve to care about others." Lucas's stubborn expression gradually stiffened. He slowly lifted his eyes. Even the muscles in his cheeks twitched slightly. "What did you say? Shirley was pregnant?" When Lucas said this, he was looking at me. Instinctively, I touched my belly and forced a bitter smile at him. Maybe because I didn't receive much love in my childhood, I liked kids a lot. I thought being with Lucas would always bring happiness. I meant to tell you during the trip, but you didn't go. What a pity. Actually, the police gave him the autopsy report, but he didn't look at it closely. Lucas's throat moved, voice dry and hoarse, trying to call my name. In the end, all he managed was a broken "I'm sorry." It's pointless, Lucas. I didn't give him a second glance. I ran straight to Lily. Lily, stop crying. I floated next to her, waving my hands and pacing anxiously, even wanting to wipe her tears away. After all, my heart was so small that I once foolishly gave a piece of it to Lucas. Now, I only have enough to care for Lily. She's probably the only person in this dirty world I still care about. Lily only knew I went traveling. When she saw the news of my death, she must have been shocked. Lucas wiped the blood from his lips and walked over to Lily, his brows furrowed in anger, veins popping on his forehead. I thought he was angry about the slap, and was going to hit Lily. After all, a guy like Lucas getting slapped in public is quite a joke. Even though I knew my current form couldn't block anything, I still spread my arms in front of Lily, anxiously urging Lucas not to do anything. Lucas's expression turned somber at my words. He took out a handkerchief and handed it to Lily, his voice trembling. I recognized that handkerchief, with a wave embroidered on it. I gave it to Lucas. Shirley says don't cry. Lily, who was wiping her tears with her sleeve, glared at Lucas as if he were a treasure and tucked the handkerchief away. I'll take care of the body, Lucas said, facing the light, his hand shaking. I'll take Shirley home. My body was finally buried by the sea. Lucas did one good thing after my death. He stood by the sea, quietly feeling the breeze, and suddenly asked me, Shirley, why do you like the sea so much? I was trying to feel the water with my toes when I heard him and froze. The foggy sky wasn't as blue as when I went out to sea, but it reminded me of Lucas's faint sea salt scent when we first met. Maybe it was just a longing for the sea my mom mentioned when I was little. She said the sea was freedom, the wind was, and the waves too. The day I first met Lucas, my mom left me to see the sea alone. I had just come out of the police station when I ran into Lucas, who had been released after being detained for a fight. They said the person he beat up was a friend who tricked him into investing. Two broken souls, huddling together for warmth. I thought my suffering had finally ended, so I naively forgave his flaws and mistakes. But all that happy illusion shattered the moment Helen returned from abroad. Shirley, it was my fault before. Tell me, what can I do to make you stay? Lucas looked hurt, pleading with his eyes for the first time. But it was all just stubbornness. I looked at Lucas, and with the same words he once used, pierced through his heart. I watched his expression shift from shock to complete breakdown. Guess when I started appearing around you? Lucas seemed to go mad. He realized that everything he did in those 7 days after my death, I had seen. He could no longer lie to me, but he stubbornly wanted to keep me. He locked himself in his room, not coming out day or night. I didn't want to go in anymore. Every time I got close, my heart ached, like the day I found the love letter. But I feared Lucas might die since he hadn't eaten or drunk anything for days. When I floated in, I found that he had somehow dug out my old clothes from the closet. Those old clothes formed a small fort, and Lucas clutched one in his hand. I didn't understand his bizarre behavior. He acted like he loved me so much. In the end, Lucas was found unconscious at home by his assistant and rushed to the hospital overnight. Helen cared for him by his bedside, looking so affectionate that I almost sighed at their loveliness. Lucas only muttered my name. Helen blew on a spoonful of kanji to cool it and brought it to Lucas's lips, eyes pleading. She made the seafood kanji I always used to make. Even the side dishes were identical. I seriously suspected Helen had stolen the recipes from my phone. When Lucas turned to see Helen, there was an icy look that scared me. I couldn't believe he knocked the kanji away and yelled for Helen to get out. Lucas, what did I do wrong? I had my reasons for leaving you back then. Shirley's dead. Do you have to take it out on me? Lucas merely looked at her coldly, then suddenly threw the papers his assistant handed him at her face. That number is yours, isn't it? Since you came back, you've always found the best way forward for yourself. Your heart was always only for you. I followed Helen's gaze to the scattered papers. They were filled with chat logs between me and Helen, evidence of her harassing me. A crackling sound filled the hospital room. I heard my weak and painful voice before my death, the waves crashing, the boat rocking. Some passengers had already fallen into the water. In my last moments of life, I dialed Lucas's number, desperately trying to grasp the final spark of life. But after a few busy signals, the call connected. It was Helen's cold and malicious voice on the other end. Then just die, Shirley. The moment the call ended, all hope was lost. I handed my life jacket to a struggling tourist nearby, letting the waves swallow me up. I guess it could be called suicide. After all, I didn't have the courage to face my lying husband again if I survived. I was exhausted and didn't want to fight anymore. That day when Dad and Mom argued, and Mom went to the beach alone and didn't answer my calls. Was it the same feeling? The bloody truth lay before Helen, and she finally broke down, losing her composure in front of Lucas. So what if I am? Lucas, you think you're such a good guy, a love guru. Stop pretending. If you really loved Shirley, why would you have contacted me when I returned to the country? I wished I could grab the fruit plate by the bedside and watch this dogfight, but unfortunately, I could only float and watch. Helen was right. She seemed to understand Lucas better than I did. Indecisive, unable to understand his own feelings. To put it harshly, just a lousy person. Lucas was enraged by her words, his chest heaving, coughing violently. He even coughed up blood in the end. Shut up, don't you dare mention her. It's all because of you. Helen looked at Lucas like she'd heard something funny, with a kind of pitiful look in her eyes. Without your indulgence, how could I have bullied her so easily? I stared at the bright red blood stains on the white sheet, suddenly stunned. I remembered that day in the room when Lucas was holding that bundle of old clothes. His fingertips were cut. He did it himself with a knife. Every piece of clothing had his blood on it, and a weird charm drawn with gold powder was stuck to the clothes. Lucas weakly opened his eyes, and when he saw me, he was overjoyed. He'd found some method somewhere, saying he could use his blood to nourish me. Maybe it was because we were once married, there was still a slight bond. That was the 10th day after I died, and I didn't disappear. But I knew clearly, it wouldn't work. After my body was buried, I slept more and more, sometimes opening my eyes to find day turning to night. Helen mocked Lucas lying in the hospital bed, crushing the phone that played the audio under her high heel. As she left the room, she looked back at the barely breathing Lucas, adding the final touch. After all these years, you're still so naive and easy to deceive. Lucas held a press conference. Newly released from the hospital, surrounded by cameras, he just showed his wedding ring, emphasizing repeatedly that I was his wife. I didn't understand his stubbornness, when he was the one who had proposed divorce and betrayed me. The whole internet was watching him and Helen's joke. Helen was almost completely banned online. Even when I floated by, I could hear people around discussing and blaming her. Helen did achieve her dreams. She became a sensation. Lucas started reinvestigating the financial fraud case from back then, eventually tracing it back to Helen. I looked at the investigation report, raising an eyebrow. Some things were expected, some weren't. Turns out Helen had treated Lucas as a backup plan from the start, even cheating on him. Cheated out of money by his girlfriend and best friend, and then set up by the same people years later. Lucas truly wasn't that smart. Helen was sent to prison by him personally. That usually well-groomed, high and mighty woman, now wearing rags in prison, utterly shattered and apparently beaten to a limp. Lucas pushed aside all company affairs. He traveled everywhere, even going miles away for a single rumor, seeking some master to prolong my life. I watched Lucas kneel in a temple, praying for me. I was stuck outside the temple, unable to enter. Finally, Lucas came out with a bitter smile. He'd gotten a blank fortune stick. Every method, whether serious or not, Lucas had tried. One night, I groggily opened my eyes, only to find Lucas facing the rising sun, praying. Lucas desperately wanted to keep me, but I was losing consciousness more and more often. Every time I opened my eyes beside him, he'd be quietly watching me. Honestly, it was a bit creepy. Even though I was just a soul, I'd still get scared by Lucas's naked gaze. None of this was effective, and I knew it well. When his money was nearly all swindled away, I persuaded him to stop. I felt I was about to fade away. I wanted Lucas to take me to see the sea. Not that I could leave him, I needed him to take me there. The sea was as blue as ever, beautiful when the waves weren't rough. From the embankment to the beach, when the waves turned golden, my body started becoming transparent. Lucas panicked, his already haggard face filled with stubbornness and madness. He reached out desperately, trying to grab me, but he couldn't touch me. Please, Shirley, don't leave me, please. Lucas's lips trembled, his voice hoarse with pleading, tears uncontrollably streaming down his face. He couldn't hold on to me. As the seawater filled me up, I felt a sense of relief. Those days lingering after death, it was like closing a chapter. Hopefully, the next life wouldn't be as tragic. After I disappeared, Lucas sat alone on the beach, watching the seafoam rise. He emptied his backpack of all sorts of things, mostly my old stuff. A small notebook fell onto the soft sand. Lucas was crazy. He took out a lighter and burned our divorce papers, along with the heap of old clothes and the backpack. I never understood why he carried those things around. With the sea breeze fanning the flames, the fire grew until it consumed everything. Lucas took one last look at the new golden hue of the sea, then walked into the water. The salty sea breeze blew, flipping to the last page of the charred black notebook. The last page was clean, with small words circled by me. We watched the sea on the rocks. Maybe we would be in love beneath the rocks. Stupid Shirley, don't get fooled again in the next life.